"You're not getting in," my brother smugly whispered, flashing his gold-embossed VIP pass right in my face outside the White House gates. For years, Julian treated me like the family failure, the quiet sister who never made anything of herself. While he racked up corporate titles, he genuinely believed I had followed him to Washington just to beg for a ticket to the gala. He snickered, nudging his wealthy fiancé as security stepped up to block me. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply pulled out my phone, opened a single email, and handed my dark screen over to the head hostess. Snorts. She scanned the encrypted QR code, and the moment her reader beeped, the color drained completely from her face. Her hand started trembling. She looked past Julian, looked straight into my eyes, and panicked. "Sir," she whispered into her earpiece, "she's here. My name is Nicole Turner. I'm 38 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the long, suffocating shadow of my older brother, Julian." To our family, Julian was the golden child, a rising corporate lobbyist who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his six-figure salary, his expensive tailored suits, and his prestigious connections. I, on the other hand, was always viewed as the quiet disappointment. While Julian built a flashy public image, I quietly pursued a career in defense logistics and private technology operations. I kept my work strictly classified, preferring results over applause. But to Julian and my parents, my silence was mistaken for lack of ambition. They assumed I was just barely scraping by, struggling to pay rent in a modest apartment while Julian conquered the corporate world. Over the years, I learned to keep my mouth shut during family dinners, enduring his condescending advice on how to make something of myself. But tonight was different. Tonight, we were standing outside the gates of the White House for a high-level evening reception. Julian was practically glowing, flashing his gold-embossed VIP pass to anyone who would look, thoroughly convinced he had finally reached the peak of social hierarchy. He looked down at me with genuine pity, believing I had somehow embarrassingly followed him to Washington just to catch a glimpse of the elite. Little did he know, the dynamic between us was about to shatter forever. Before we continue with what happened next, drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. To understand how we ended up outside those gates, you have to understand the dynamic of our family over the last decade. Thanksgiving dinners were always a performance piece for Julian. He would hold court at the dinner table, casually dropping names of politicians, CEOs, and high-ranking officials he claimed to have advised. My parents hung on his every word, beaming with pride as he detailed his latest promotions and luxury purchases. Meanwhile, whenever the conversation turned to me, it was always delivered with a tone of quiet sympathy. "Nicole is still doing her little government contracting job," my mother would explain to distant relatives, sighing as if I worked part-time at a local convenience store. I never corrected them. The truth was, my clearance level required strict confidentiality. I wasn't allowed to discuss the supply chain security frameworks I was designing, nor could I share the high-level defense operations my team managed across 3 continents. While Julian was busy networking at cocktail parties, taking selfies with low-tier staff members to post on social media, I was briefing actual department heads on critical national infrastructure vulnerabilities. I didn't care about the lack of recognition at home. I found genuine fulfillment in the work itself, knowing that the systems I built kept millions of people safe every single day. But Julian's arrogance grew with every passing year. He began to truly believe that my quiet nature was proof of weakness, and that my lack of financial bragging meant I was failing at life. He had snorts no idea that my silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the event, when Julian posted a lavish video on social media showing off an invitation to the White House evening gala. He framed it as the ultimate proof of his success, claiming his lobbying firm had selected him personally for his unrivaled contributions to industry policy. In reality, his firm had simply bought a group sponsor package, granting Snorts them a handful of mid-tier general admission passes. But to hear Julian talk, you'd think the president had personally written him a handwritten letter begging for his presence. When I called my parents that weekend to check on them, my mother couldn't stop talking about it. Your brother is going to be in the same room as cabinet secretaries, Nicole. She beamed, her voice filled with awe. It's a shame you won't ever get to experience something like that. When I casually mentioned that I was actually traveling to Washington, D.C. that exact same weekend for work, Julian happened to be listening on speakerphone. He burst out laughing. D.C. is a big city, Nicole. He sneered, not bothering to hide his amusement. Don't go hanging around the perimeter hoping to catch a glimpse of me walking in. It's a secure event for actual important people. Security won't even let you on the same block without a high-level clearance. He went on for 10 minutes, lecturing me about security protocols he barely understood, warning me not to embarrass the family by showing up near the gates. I just smiled through the phone, gently placed my phone on the desk, and let him talk himself out. Which brings us back to the humid Washington air, standing outside the heavily fortified security checkpoint on Pennsylvania Avenue. Snorts. Julian looked stunningly sharp in a midnight blue tuxedo, his arm wrapped around his fiancée, Victoria, who was busy taking live stream videos on her phone. They were surrounded by a dozen other corporate attendees, all laughing loudly and casually, showing off their gold-lettered guest passes. As I approached the back of the queue, wearing a tailored black suit and carrying a simple leather handbag, Julian noticed me. His smile vanished, replaced instantly by an expression of pure irritation and embarrassment. "What on earth are you doing here, Nicole?" he barked, stepping out of line to confront me. "I told you on the phone this isn't a public park. You can't just wander up to the White House perimeter." Victoria smirked, turning her phone camera toward me like I was a tragic spectacle. "Julian, is this your sister?" she whispered loudly enough for 3 nearby Secret Service officers to hear. "Does she think this is a museum tour?" Julian shook his head, pulling out his wallet and flashing his VIP pass directly in my face like a badge of honor. "You're not getting in," Julian mocked, his voice dripping with arrogance. "They check names against in federal manifest here. If you don't step back right now, I'm going to ask security to escort you away so you don't ruin my night." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice or offer a single word of defense. I calmly reached into my handbag, unlocked my phone screen, and brought up an encrypted email containing a single high-security QR code. I bypassed Julian completely, stepped up to the front podium, and handed my dark screen directly to the head protocol hostess. "Security won't even let you on the same block without a high-level clearance." He went on for 10 minutes, lecturing me about security protocols he barely understood, warning me not to embarrass the family by showing up near the gates. I just smiled through the phone, gently placed my phone on the desk, and let him talk himself out. Which brings us back to the humid Washington air, standing outside the heavily fortified security checkpoint on Pennsylvania Avenue. Snorts. Julian looked stunningly sharp in a midnight blue tuxedo, his arm wrapped around his fiancée, Victoria, who was busy taking live stream videos on her phone. They were surrounded by a dozen other corporate attendees, all laughing loudly and casually, showing off their gold-lettered guest passes. As I approached the back of the queue, wearing a tailored black suit and carrying a simple leather handbag, Julian noticed me. His smile vanished, replaced instantly by an expression of pure irritation and embarrassment. "What on earth are you doing here, Nicole?" he barked, stepping out of line to confront me. "I told you on the phone this isn't a public park. You can't just wander up to the White House perimeter." Victoria smirked, turning her phone camera toward me like I was a tragic spectacle. "Julian, is this your sister?" she whispered loudly enough for 3 nearby Secret Service officers to hear. "Does she think this is a museum tour?" Julian shook his head, pulling out his wallet and flashing his VIP pass directly in my face like a badge of honor. "You're not getting in," Julian mocked, his voice dripping with arrogance. "They check names against in federal manifest here. If you don't step back right now, I'm going to ask security to escort you away so you don't ruin my night." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice or offer a single word of defense. I calmly reached into my handbag, unlocked my phone screen, and brought up an encrypted email containing a single high-security QR code. I bypassed Julian completely, stepped up to the front podium, and handed my dark screen directly to the head protocol hostess. The moment the hostess pressed her digital handheld reader against my screen, a high-pitched double beep echoed through the quiet security checkpoint. Her screen didn't display a standard guest registration or a routine corporate seating assignment. It flashed a solid glowing red overlay with a top-tier security authorization banner. The color instantly drained from the hostess's face. She stared down at her reader, her fingers trembling so visibly that she nearly dropped the device onto the pavement. Julian sneered behind me, completely misinterpreting her sudden panic. "See?" Julian scoffed loudly, stepping forward to push his gold pass into her view. "I told you she didn't belong here. She probably downloaded a fake code off the internet. You should call officers over to clear her out." The hostess ignored him completely. She didn't even look at his pass. Instead, she lifted a shaking hand to her earpiece, pressing the radio button with urgent pressure. "Control, this is Gate 4. She whispered, her voice cracking slightly under the intense pressure. "We have a crimson-level security match at the main pedestal." "Sir, she's here." Within 10 seconds, heavy footsteps echoed across the stone walkway. A high-ranking military aide alongside two uniformed Secret Service commanders approached the gate at a rapid pace, bypassing the entire line of waiting corporate guests. Julian stood there with his mouth half open, assuming the security detail was arriving to arrest me. But as the lead officer reached the podium, he ignored Julian entirely, came to a sharp, formal halt directly in front of me, and delivered a crisp salute. "Ms. Turner," the officer announced clearly, his voice carrying across the entire crowd. "We've been expecting you inside the main residence. The Secretary and the Admiral are already waiting in the West Executive Anteroom. Please, follow us." Julian's eyes went wide with pure horror as the realization hit him. I wasn't an uninvited guest. I was the keynote guest of honor. The heavy iron gate swung wide open, completely clearing the path ahead of me. As the lead officer motioned for me to step through, the silence in the security queue was absolute. Julian stood frozen in place, his arm frozen around Victoria, who had completely stopped recording her live video. The gold-embossed VIP pass in Julian's hand now looked like nothing more than a cheap, useless piece of paper compared to the military escorts standing at attention around me. "Wait, there must be some kind of mistake," Julian stammered, stepping forward in desperation as his face turned bright red. "She's my sister. She works a basic government contracting job. I'm the one with the corporate sponsorship pass." The Secret Service officer turned slowly, giving Julian a cold, sharp look that instantly silenced him. "Sir, step back behind the blue line," the officer commanded firmly. "Your group's general access credentials are currently undergoing routine secondary verification. You will wait your turn in line like everyone else." As I walked past my brother, I paused for just a fraction of a second. I didn't gloat, I didn't laugh, and I didn't say a single word. I simply looked him dead in the eye, adjusted the lapel of my jacket, and let the quiet reality sink in. He wasn't sitting at the top table. He was only in the building at all because my division had funded his lobbying firm's attendance. My parents, who were currently watching the gala's arrival stream at home, would soon see their quiet daughter being walked into the executive wing by top-ranking officials while their golden child was stuck waiting at the gate. Inside the residence, the ceremony was flawless. Standing on that stage while receiving the Civilian Service Award, I felt no need for anger or revenge. The ultimate satisfaction wasn't making Julian feel small. It was proving to myself that quiet dedication will always outshine loud arrogance. After the official presentations concluded, Julian finally made his way into the main hall. The swagger he had worn outside was completely gone, replaced by a subdued, humbled posture. He approached me slowly, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water, his eyes fixed firmly on the ground. "Nicole," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the chatter of the room. I I had no idea. I'm sorry. I accepted the glass, gave him a polite nod, and simply said, "Success doesn't need to shout, Julian. It just needs to deliver." My parents called me early the next morning, their voices filled with a mixture of shock, pride, and genuine embarrassment for how they had treated me over the years. From that day forward, the family dynamic changed forever. Julian never bragged at the dinner table again, and I continued doing the work I loved, knowing that true power never needs to prove itself to anyone. Now, I'm curious to hear from you who listened to my story. What would you have done if you were standing in my place at that gate? Have you ever dealt with a relative who underestimated you until reality caught up with them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories, and click the video on your screen to watch another channel favorite. Thank you for watching until the end.